Hello, everybody. I'm Kipp Snow, Director of the Transportation Distribution and Logistics Institute at the Community College of Baltimore County.
Hey, everybody. Mike Singer, Community Manager, Baltimore and Chesapeake Bay Shipwatchers. Welcome to the Baltimore and Chesapeake Bay Shipwatchers Podcast, episode 27. 27.
It seems like 20. I thought we were just doing 24, so I don't know what happened to 25.
Yeah, you thought we were just doing 24, and then we're just going to, the heck with this thing, we're done?
Just done. Yeah.
Is that what was written in our contract, just 24, and we're out of here?
There was a contract?
Well, I thought that's what you're implying.
Oh, okay. Does that go back to when do I get my first paycheck on this one?
Yeah. Right after me, buddy. Right after me.
Oh. There was a lot of news this week in the Port of Baltimore.
A lot. And it's so funny because a bunch of it came out like a day after we did the last podcast,
Right.
So kind of funny how that happened.
Why don't we go ahead and get into the shipping updates so we can get through everything that was going on this week?
Yeah. So as we start every week, we're talking about some metrics that the Port of Baltimore uses and tracks and publicizes every week. So the truck transactions that they keep track of. And what we've been doing is we've been just using a daily average for the week, right? So it's basically how many truck transactions per week. And then once you get into 3,000, 3,500, you're in the range of pre-bridge accident container levels. Okay. So like the last 4 weeks, starting 4 weeks ago, 3335 per day. Then 3,045 per day, then 3,371 per day. And then this last week averaged over 3,500 for the whole week. So 3,551. So I don't know if you remember this. Last week, Port of Baltimore did a post where they said, "Oh, hey, look, we did," and I forget what the number was, 17,400 or I just had it. But so 2 weeks in a row, another best week since the bridge. Beat it by like a couple hundred from last week. So 17,758 truck transactions this week. So that's
strong numbers,
pretty
strong
awesome.
Numbers. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. They've opened up that other gate. I think they're extending some gate hours. So,
and there is quite a bit of communications coming out of the Port of Baltimore channels that discusses what those those changes to gate operations and related actions.
Mm-hmm. And then we just missed it with the other podcast, but the Savannah had an open house.
Yeah.
This Saturday. And
I know Bob Adams was publicizing that on the NS Savannah Facebook pages.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody's interested in what's happening with the nuclear ship Savannah down at Pier 13, go take a look at those groups. I'm sure Bob would appreciate us giving him a plug on that.
Sure.
We'll kind of keep an eye on if they have some more open houses so that we can help let the community know when those opportunities exist.
Right. So they, Bob was really kind of driving that, and he was really working that Savannah Facebook page, and there was a lot of interest. And when he would get a good bit of interest, they would let him do, not really an open house, but it was kind of more invitation only, but they would let him have visitors on, and it's not just Bob. When you open the ship up, it's it's more than just one guy. It's a bit more involved. You need guides. You need people there. There are procedures because it is a U.S. government ship. But they really saw the value in that, and so he's been doing occasional ones, sometimes once a month. But this one was a big, almost like Maritime Day, not with everything else, but just in the fact that open house from 9 to 3 or 10 to 3 all day. Anybody can come down and visit anywhere in that time frame. And the other ones were a bit more restrictive. So, and then they had 300 people visit, which I think is a significant amount. Now, I don't have the other numbers to compare it to, but Bob said he was wiped out.
And the fact that he's volunteering to do all of this,
yeah,
that's important.
Bob loves that ship. He loves that ship, man.
Every time I get a chance to go, he always wants to show me what the latest project is and what was involved in the all the work he did with all the speakers and the whole sound system for the ship. So,
right. He's done an awful lot of work and figured out a lot of different things and rehabbed certain things and got all kinds of different audio systems working throughout the ship. Yeah, he's like a kid with a new toy, man. He loves working on that stuff, and he's good at it. You see his stories about, I fixed this thing, or I rebuilt these speaker cones, and took the magnet apart, and like, what?
Yep.
Yeah, he's pretty good with that.
There was last podcast we talked about, or maybe it was 2 ago. We had some unusual looking ships that were in port. I understand there was another unusual ship that came in.
Yeah, let's take a look at this thing. So let's see if we can. So this is a stern view, but I mean right away you're like,
what is that?
What in the world is that? Right? And yeah, let's go through the pictures here. Look at that. That's interesting.
What is?
I think it's like a row. I mean, it's like a ramp here.
Looks like
a full stern ramp. But then it has this crane that runs. It almost reminds you of those gantry crane ships, but
I was just about to say
on like a different level. Yeah, really unusual. And I had no clue. Right? So this is my hobby. I love this stuff. That's why we're here. It's why you're here with me today. We're taping this podcast because I spend way too much time paying attention to this stuff. And I had no clue about this until an hour before the podcast, and I'm just kind of looking at my notifications on Facebook. Oh, Diane, one of our favorite photographers, said she unusual. What? Let me go look at this thing. What in the world? Yeah, just look at that.
Oh, they're the it's a forward bridge.
Yeah. Even with the now, what is this? What is this light post structure? It has a name. Do you know what it's called? I don't. Yeah. They're going to take away my ship watching card again.
That's okay.
Dang it.
If somebody will put into the comments and help us out, what is this? What is this thing?
And it's on the front of every ship, and they all look different. But it just seems to me like it's kind of unusual that you've got the structure right there, and then you have to have this extra structure in front also. But maybe that helps act as a guide. Maybe there's a requirement that light, that. Oh, and the guy's up working on the light, isn't he? Let's just check this out. Somebody up there working on something.
In the nest there.
Yeah. But yeah, interesting, really interesting looking ship. Let's see, there we go. And you see the guy like waving, like they're always very friendly. I always like when you get the shot of
The straight
like
front end shot, yeah.
but another ship in the background.
Oh yeah,
More
I
than
see that now. Yeah.
one. That is interesting.
So is it a ro-ro ship or is it
Well,
a
I
car?
think it is. I mean, when you pull it up on marine traffic, it just. I wonder. No, I don't want to do that. I wonder if it. I think it comes up as general cargo ship, but you really can't go by those classifications in marine traffic. Sometimes they're not.
Not 100% correct.
I mean, this looks like a ro-ro ship to me. That that I imagine this is a ramp here.
Mm-hmm.
Or there was a ramp, on the back there. It looked like it was a ramp on the back there. So,
Okay.
and then also this week, Wendy and I attended the Portside Party.
Oh
My wife
yes,
Wendy and I,
with the
right?
Sail Baltimore group.
Right,
How was it?
exactly. That was nice. It was
I didn't,
nice.
I'm sorry I missed it with you guys. I had to venture out to the West Coast on a business oriented trip. So
Gotcha. Yeah, it would have been cool to have you there. And it looks like they just took over this entire bar.
mm,
Um, and there were all these different rooms, and it was funny, and they were auctioning some items like, baskets with all this different stuff in it, like boat trips, or one might be crab themed or ravens themed, or that it may have, you know, alcohol on it or something, whatever,
mhm.
all these different baskets that they auction off to try to
Sure,
raise
sure.
money. And they're like, oh, go over into the other room and check out all the stuff. Well, I walk into the other room. We walk into the other room. There's a whole additional pile of people over there,
Wow.
Food was great and really well attended. So met some Sail Baltimore board members,
Okay.
which was kind of cool. Ran into some usual suspects like Patrick Smith from Sail Baltimore and Pride of Baltimore. So we had a good time. Talked to
Good.
some nice people, and I
So
talked to Nan. She said she thinks it was they did pretty good. So
good. Good.
she
That was going to be my next question. Was how well was it attended? It sounded like it was. I wonder how much, how well their fundraising efforts went for with trying to go and support a lot of their initiatives. So
right, and I did contact her this evening, and she said she wasn't ready to. She hasn't had everything all tallied up, but things look
sure,
good.
I'm going to
So
take some time to do that. Sure.
So that's awesome. And then another thing that happened while, like, right after the podcast, or was it right? Was it right before the podcast?
It was
Yeah, it
probably
was
right
like
at the same
it was
time.
like the yeah. So the Oxford Bellevue Ferry,
Mm,
right? So
yeah.
down by St. Michael's. Um, so there's St. Michael's is actually on a peninsula, but then there's another town, Oxford,
Mm-hmm.
on across the river, across the Tread Avon River, and there's this ferry that's been running there forever, literally.
Mm,
And it is a maritime business, so
true.
we do like to give them a shout out once in a while when we can, when they have something significant happening. People like to go down there and just kind of go to one town or the other and then take the ferry over, maybe ride their bikes, or you can put your car on there so you can drive and then
Mm-hmm.
just kind of keep going. Um, so it was their last day. The season was November 10th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, did you dig up some information about
Yeah,
that? I was
a
hoping you
little
could
bit.
find.
I had heard of the ferry service a little bit, but hadn't done any research on it. So the Oxford Bellevue Ferry is the nation's oldest privately owned ferry service.
I know.
So I
Isn't
thought
that
that was
cool?
pretty interesting that I didn't know that they had, that there were, privately owned ferries that would, you typically think, oh, it's got some type of government involvement or a state contractor or something like that. And, lots of, you know, processes and regulations and things that you've got to deal with. But this is a privately owned ferry service. It was established in 1683.
Isn't that
It's
crazy?
that old.
Like I said, it's been there forever.
Forever. Crossing the Tread Avon River between Oxford and Bellevue, Maryland. One-way trip takes about 10 minutes. All right. So
Yeah,
once you
it's
get,
not.
it's not that long.
Mm-hmm.
Their schedule, they do run from April to November, and from April to October, they run 7 days a week, and they cross about every 15 to 20 minutes. So it's pretty easy to get a lane on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
In November, it's only Saturdays and Sundays. And then from December
Makes
to
sense.
March, they're closed. And I'm going to imagine that's due to cold weather and the alike. And probably during those months, they don't have as much service,
Right. So you
or
can't be
demand
spending
for
that
it.
gas,
Yep.
diesel, I guess, to go back and forth if you don't have any customers.
Correct. December through March, they're closed. So now they took their last trip back on the 10th. So they'll be back up operating in March. The fees, just so you can kind of get an idea, one-way ticket is $16. It's not bad at all.
Yeah.
$28 round trip. And then depending on if you've got a trailer or large truck or bicycle, or there are some other charges associated with that. They also have a frequent rider program, 10 trips for $140.
Wow.
So
This is something I didn't really think about.
I wonder if they take Easy Pass. Probably not.
Be a no.
No. So if you want some more information on the ferry, go to www.oxfordferry.com, and all of that information is readily available there. So pretty interesting local little tidbit operations. So.
Yeah.
The Dolly, where in the world is the Dolly this week? I think
Where in the world is the Dolly? Well, she is. It finally made it to the port where they're gonna. I think they're gonna do the work.
Okay.
So she came into the port. I don't know. It's about a week ago now. And then I think they moved across the harbor or whatever to where the dry dock is. But now the AIS is off, so we'll probably just have to wait until
any news press
or it's just rebuilt and they turn the AIS on, and because like I said, the camera chatters, the people who hang out in the webcam chat room for the port cam, those are some inquisitive folks, man. They figure some stuff out. So somebody out of 5 or 6 of them that are really paying attention to this, somebody will notice when that ping comes on, and because somebody will be looking at it for the next 6 months or something. I'm covering it because people are interested. Do I care? Yeah. It's gone. I personally
get it.
Yeah.
Still interesting to continue on and see what's happening on related to something that happened here locally.
Now, related to that, which you and I haven't had a chance to talk to, and I just texted our buddy Josh with the Baltimore International Seafarer Center.
Yes.
Some of the crew is still here. So the ship made it all the way to China, and the crew is still here.
Okay.
And Josh says, he's doing his best to take care of them. Good. So I know I seem to say this like every week. Maybe we should have him back on.
It's a really, really difficult process to try to no, sorry, I'm not trying to pull the pun there, but it's difficult to navigate through.
Ah! All right.
But yeah,
You credit for that one? You did that one by accident. I don't know if
I
you
did
get
that one
credit
by
for
accident. I didn't mean to. But, yeah, no, I mean, I don't know where there's a precedence on this one. I mean, it's, what we need to make sure that everything is taken care of. But I do recognize that there is a humane aspect of this, and
Sure. I'm sure they want to get home, see their families, and
absolutely.
then remember when Josh was basically painting a picture of what it's like for them, for their lives, for them financially.
Right.
And sometimes, they'll get home for a break and there's no money because they sent all the money home and then the family spent all the money. So guess
Right.
what? They have to go back out at sea and make more money because they got home and there wasn't anything left.
Yeah.
So now they're not making any money. So I don't know. Is their family suffering back home? I mean, I just came up with all this.
Sure. No, I mean, it's definitely a concern to,
Yeah.
Sure.
Kind of messed up.
Yeah. Speaking of bridges, there was some movement on the Bay Bridge.
Yes. And this is why I wanted to cover this because so there's been this study. This is crazy. They started these studies in 2017, Kip. 2017. So, and we'll cover the end of it a little bit later because I've got a write up here, but and they're not going to be done with the study until the fall of 26. So we're talking about 9 years, right? And I think now I don't know. I'm not a civil engineer. I'm not a construction guy. I'm not into Maryland permitting for the state, and I really don't understand how all this works. But if I do have a reasonable understanding of it, this section of getting this part of the studies done for a bridge, right? For the Bay Bridge is 9 years. We basically waved off and skipped over that for the Key Bridge.
Right.
In a few months. Because they already knew where it was going to go. It was going to go in the same place. It was going to be the same width. It's going to be on the exact same center line, so you don't have to go through all the environmental studies, and you don't have to look at, which one of these 14 places are we going to build the Key Bridge?
Right.
And then have meetings at libraries in 14 different communities, 4 different times. So, it makes you appreciate. Now, I know we look out there, you look at the camera, or you're close enough to the port and you get to see, Key Bridge is still there. What's left of it? They haven't even started taking it down yet. But I think we can appreciate that the process is
right.
Tremendously sped up. A lot more than 9 years.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, that's just crazy. But I wanted to read a couple of points from the article. So Maryland proposes removing and replacing both spans of the Bay Bridge with new structures. So, like I started to say, the reason I wanted to cover this is because there was talk whether it was going to be one bridge or two or how many or how are you going to. And this is the first time that I've heard somebody come out and specify, we want to build 2 new bridges and tear down both old ones. That succinct of a summary of what they really wanted to do.
Right.
But let me get to some of these points here. There are a couple of options on the order of construction and removal of each span. For example, they could build 2 new spans that would both sit south of the existing spans, which is there's not a whole lot of room there. How? And if you build both of them and they're both 4 lanes wide, I mean, wow. And then once they're finished, the crews would remove both the existing spans, or they could build one south of the existing spans, then remove the existing eastbound span, which would be the older one, and then build the second new span between the site of the current two. So basically, in place of the old one. And so to learn more about all the possible alternatives for the proposed new spans, MDTA encourage you to attend one of these public forums. So virtual open house Wednesday, December 4th, 6 to 8, and go to baycrossingstudy.com to stream that. Anne Arundel County open house Monday, December 9th, 6 to 8, Broadneck High School. Queen Anne's County open house Wednesday, December 11th, 6 to 8, Kent Island High School. And they were saying, a project of this magnitude just, doesn't move quickly. And obviously we were just talking about that. And then this is the part that really drives it home for me. Once this public comment period is finished, then the 6 alternatives will have to be evaluated. So even though they've chosen card or 7 out of the 14 different locations, they have 6 different build alternatives for this one location.
Wow.
Right. So once the comment period is finished, then the 6 alternatives will have to be evaluated, a draft environmental impact statement presented fall of 2026, public hearings held, MDTA's choice of alternative identified in the final environmental impact statement. Then and only then could they design and construct the thing, provided there's enough funding.
Right.
So even after 9 years, and you finally get to the end, and you finally chosen one, and oh geez, do we have any money? Let's hope they didn't waste the last 9 years and whatever it is, $100 million in studies.
I'm gonna hope that they're looking at the funding over the 9 years while they're putting all of this together. I get that there are funding issues and challenges that may go into that, but it's I would hope that would not derail this whole process for the amount of work. It's been extensive, the amount of research and work that all of the entities have done trying to figure out what to do. I mean, coming from the 14 different options down to 7 that we've heard year over year. I find it interesting that the couple of plans, where one of them includes building one bridge, dismantling the oldest bridge and putting it in place. I wonder if that will speed up anything, kind of mirroring what's happening with the Key Bridge. So, if the Key Bridge is going to, able to use this, the new bridge is able to use the same footprint, and maybe speed up some of that process by using that second model. That I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility to kind of help with this situation. But it'd be interesting to continue.
And then my thoughts immediately went to, the first thing I thought was, well, if you just wanted to build 2 bridges and you didn't have to tear one of them down first before you put another one in its place, then getting the 2 bridges built without tearing the other 2 down first would be obviously the fastest. But you do bring up a point. But then again, I thought, with the reviews and everything, we were kind of past that.
Right.
So I don't know. Who knows? Every time this is brought up in social media, there seems to be somebody complaining, man, they've been spending all this money and doing all these studies forever. And but this is one process from 2017 to 2026. God, it just seems like.
It's also a pretty big bridge.
It is. And now when you're talking about how do you find room for another one? And the next one's got to be bigger. I mean, and then now think about this. Think about this. If the old bridge is only 2 lanes, if you build a bridge that's 4 lanes, and then you have to leave room to put another 4-lane bridge in between the other two. I mean, just think how far away that new 4-lane bridge is going to have to be, because you're going to have to take down the little one, and then you're going to put one twice as wide in its place.
So kind of from a perspective, let's take a look at what happened down in Charleston when they built the Ravenel Bridge, the cable splay bridge,
cable stay bridge down there.
Yeah, the 2 existing bridges, they actually built the new bridge over. It actually crossed over the other 2 bridges at one point in the span. So
what?
Yeah, so the old Grace Memorial Bridge had two inclines and declines because they had a dredge island that it kind of stopped, was kind of the midpoint, and they built the new bridge to tie into an interstate system, and they actually built it over, not on top, but it spanned over the old bridge, and then they dismantled everything once they turned the new bridge on.
Wow.
So I think there are some ways to be able to address the spacing issues. I do agree. It's like, you gotta leave enough space for the construction crews and and all of those types of involvement. But I think that there's a little bit of wiggle room there based on where they what they can do with it. I think it's more of an issue if they do the build one bridge and then take one out and replace it versus just 2 new ones. 2 new ones they can go and build out with a little bit more ease, I think, and not have to worry about the spacing requirements.
That's true, but then you do have to worry about land acquisition, because now you're acquiring and making room for more than twice the amount of land.
Correct.
So just us 2 heads talking about this, you realize none of this is easy.
And I'm not a bridge guy, so I don't. They're cool to look at. I like to drive over them.
There you go. That's about it.
Speaking of bridges, there was. I'm going to jump here to the Key Bridge.
Okay.
Since we're talking about bridges.
Okay. Let's do it.
The MTA, the Maryland Transportation Authority, confirmed on Thursday that the demolition of the remaining bridge structures have been pushed back. Demolition is estimated to begin around the summer or the fall of 2024. That was when it was originally supposed to happen. Now officials are saying that it'll occur sometime around the winter or spring of 2025. So next couple of months, there are some indicators there that it has been pushed back.
Yeah. Well, it's good to hear something.
Correct.
Because there's a whole community of nut jobs, the guy with the headphones on right now included, who actually pay attention to this stuff. And like, well, what the heck's going on? How come I don't see anything happening? And so I was curious, what was happening, when was it actually going to start? So
sure,
it's good to hear something. Pun number 2, concrete, come out, and
we need a scoreboard. Mike 1, Kipp 1. Let's see how many puns we can create.
If the puns are worse, does the scoreboard go into the negative?
Yeah, I'll give you an extra half a point for that one. You're in the lead. All right. So, all right. Well, again, where's the precedence here? I mean, sure, we all want this bridge rebuilt as quickly as possible. Right. I don't want it done too quickly, to be honest with you, because I got to go drive over the thing once it gets built.
Right.
But there are other things that have to also be addressed. You can't just go out there and start cranking out, let's bring the concrete mixer out there and start pouring. So all of the contractors are going to be bound by regulatory requirements, multiple permits, coordinating with the environmental agencies, even though, they're addressing things already, or it's going over the same footprint. There's still an environmental connection to that. And all the evaluations and the safety precautions during a demolition process. So it's not like you can just go up and, stick a whole bunch of dynamite on the thing, blow it up, and just start taking it out. It's, there is some involvement. And so there is going to be a little bit of, fluctuations in the scheduling for this. Demoing an intact structure, such opposed to clearing wreckage, requires a different approach. And moreover, the contractor is bound by regulatory requirements, which include securing multiple permits, coordinating with environmental agencies, and conducting evaluations on environmental and safety conditions throughout the whole demolition process. So it's not just, hey, let's get the permits and go. You're going to have people who come in and check and validate, and quality control and safety and all those things. And so that still may cause some delays as we go through this particular process.
And I mean, there's a lot of big stuff left out there. I mean, it's hard to imagine how they're going to bring it all down.
Well, you also
pick up all the pieces and haul it all off. And
so somebody may say, hey, look, it didn't take us that long to go and pull the part of the bridge out of the channel. Why should it take so long for the rest of the bridge?
Well, it's because that stuff was already wrecked.
It was already wrecked. It was already in the water.
It's not standing. It's different, I think.
So we have to keep that in mind that, we had an emergency situation which required us to go in there and clean it up. Now that we're back operating, we need to go back and do everything as it's designed, as it's permitted, as it's regulated to do that correct process.
All right.
These complexities add more time to the demolition phase, which is scheduled to begin again, later on this fall or the winter time of 2025.
Yeah, and like I said, I imagine they're going to be bringing some equipment up, right? So people who pay attention to this stuff, I'm sure we'll see the equipment coming up the bay days in advance, right? Before it happens. So I'm calling an audible here.
Okay.
So check this out. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at these, but this is the first thing that I've seen that look like real drawings, real plans for the bridge. I know, right? Isn't that fascinating?
So what we're looking at for the audio listeners is a schematic. Who's the governing body here?
Well, this was put out by the Coast Guard because they're asking for comments.
Okay.
Till December 7th, I think.
All right.
But it is neat. They've got the plan view, which is looking down at the top. And then they've got the elevation view, which is looking at the side of the bridge. And they've got it superimposed over the key bridge, the original key bridge. Yeah, it's just this is the first thing that I've seen that's now supposedly these are somewhat notional. This isn't a final design.
Correct.
But darn, it sure looks close to one.
It looks pretty sharp,
doesn't it? And so as a draftsman myself, you couple the fact that I've been doing drafting for 40 years.
Yeah.
And now here's some drawings of the most significant project in the Port of Baltimore in decades.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So pretty exciting stuff just to see these, right? Look at this section here.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can blow this up anymore. So These are the cable stays here on the end.
Interesting.
See it? 92 feet between the cable stays. So I don't know if they've specified this, but for some reason, that's the way they're showing on this one.
Mm-hmm.
So this one will have, the cable stays won't be, I mean, as this is drawn, won't have the cable stays down the center like we see on a lot of these cable stay bridges. But so look at this. This, I mean, conceptual plans. Here it is. I didn't really read this. Utilized for Coast Guard bridge permit. MDTA. And here's your local Rummel, Kleppel, and Cowell, like home run civil engineering, firm that's, Baltimore famous for decades.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, let me see if I can zoom back out here.
I'll tell you this: there might be a delay in the podcast editing, because when I get to this point, I'm going to end up spending more time going and looking at it instead of editing.
Oh, so you really haven't had time to take a look?
No, I hadn't looked at this yet. Yeah.
And then so tied into this, so I went to the port meeting last Friday, and there's Coast Guard there, there's Customs, all these different agencies and interested parties at these meetings. And there was a Coast Guard guy there, and he was talking about a restriction around the bridge. And so this is fat. I saw this and I'm like, well, what does that mean? And I really didn't. So look here. It says conceptual temporary construction access trestle. So he told us that basically they're going to build temporary bridge so they can truck the materials out to build these tall posts. They're going to build a temporary bridge. So basically, you won't be able to, the only place you'll be able to go through is through the channel. From shore to shore, all the way out to where those posts are going to be, is basically going to be blocked off to everybody but like kayakers and fish. Because they're building a temporary bridge. So he said, instead of trying to use barges to get all the equipment out there, and then maybe that's a logistical issue. Where do you find enough big enough, heavy enough barges to, how many cement trucks or how much steel, right? And so build a temporary access bridge basically out to the center of the harbor so you can truck the materials out. Right? Okay. Wild, huh? Oh yeah. So yeah, you'll be looking at this. You'll be in this for an hour.
Sorry, everybody.
When's that guy going to edit that podcast and get that thing out? I don't know, maybe Wednesday or something. Mike showed him some really good diagrams. And yeah, this is really cool.
That is really cool. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that is really cool.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
That was exciting.
I know.
Carnival Cruise Lines. You want to talk about some cruise stuff?
Yeah. So we'll go through the numbers and then we'll talk about it. So it's official. Carnival Cruise Line is staying in the Port of Baltimore for another 5 years. And then part of the port meeting that I attended, Jonathan Daniels, executive director of the port, showed up, it's always cool when he's there. And he was saying, there's plans for an extension. There's an available 5-year extension. So this is pretty much a 10-year agreement.
Okay.
So just to give some background about the effects that just this one ship has, I think in 2023, so it's more than that. In 2023, more than 444,000 passengers cruised from the Port of Baltimore, the third highest total in the port's history and the most since 2012. More than 400 jobs were generated by the cruise industry in Maryland, including 220 direct jobs at the Port of Baltimore. Cruise activities from the Port of Baltimore generate approximately $1 million per cruise in economic impacts for Maryland, including local spending, hotels, dining, and entertainment. But I guess this is just an agreement that we understand that we can schedule and look forward to having your ship come in. This isn't like a labor thing, or this is just like a contract for the ship to come in. That
so
kind of wasn't clear to me what exactly this is.
Yeah, so part of the role that the Port of Baltimore has, or the Maryland Port Administration has, is not only the day-to-day transactions, but it's also to drum up business for the port. And so part of their role is to go out and talk, specific with the cruise lines, is to go and attract other cruise lines to come in and call on the port. And they will enter into agreements that say, for the next 4 or 5 years, Carnival or whoever is going to agree to call on the port, and they can plan out their fees, and because there's a cost associated with stopping here that they're going to pay the
that's
the state,
true.
and all the utilization fees for the terminals.
Totally forgot about like port fees.
Yeah, so there are some.
So I'm sure that's in there. I'm sure that's factored in there.
Agreed. So we want to have those contracts solidified so that they don't just pull out or leave this port of call, which is similar to some of the things that's happening down in Charleston with Carnival Cruises and the terminal changes that are happening down there.
Yeah, kind of going the other way. It's kind of a bummer.
Correct. So I mean, it means more cruise operations coming through Baltimore. The point that you made towards the end of your narrative there was that for every person who comes in, they're taking some mode of transportation to get here. A lot of times they will spend the night, ahead or after their trip here.
Oh yeah, almost always the night before.
They're spending money. So it is an economic driver. It's not just, it is fun and pleasure and a good time, but there is some economics that's tied to this.
So also from the meeting, and what my plan was, raise your hand, Kip, if you've heard this before. What my plan, I haven't said anything yet. Stop it.
Oh, okay.
You know where I was going though. I would love to have, because I've got a whole bunch of notes from the meeting.
Sure.
But this is, and so I'm just throwing them in here as we encounter them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So the executive director of Port of Baltimore didn't let us know that Crystal Cruises, which I think is a little bit more of a higher end line, smaller ships.
Okay.
I think is coming in 2025, and then there's a German brand coming in 2026. So they are actively recruiting additional ships and cruise lines.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll become the Port Everglades of the North?
He's going to try.
I know he's going to try. I'm okay with that.
I'm fully convinced with all of his knowledge, right? Because remember we were in that port meeting, and off the top of his head, he knew every ship that was available in like 5 or 10 different cruise lines that was small enough to get into this port.
Right.
He knew them off the top of his head. he's already eyeballing it. So to the expansion of the cruise port, and I think one thing that's going to be challenging is the parking,
Sure.
which is wonderful now as long as you have just a couple of ships and right. But now you've got so far you've got 2 ships gone for a week. So now you've got 2 ships worth of cars in that lot at one time.
And there's not a lot of room. There's not a lot of room for expansion because you got Baltimore to the north doing all the paper products, and you've got who's on the.
They do some ro-ro there.
Well, the ready reserve ships are also parked over on the other side of there, so there's not a lot of space there.
Right, there's the subcom pier.
Yep.
Yeah, but they're going to have to get creative with parking, and we have talked to him about that, and he is actively thinking about how he's going to make that happen.
Sure.
Yeah. What else do we got on here? Because we went out of order, so I'm not sure what's left.
We were in the news this week.
We were. That was fun, huh?
Yeah.
To do that.
That was a nice little article that they put together. BAL.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you appreciate the process, right? Because you and I were on site for 2 or 3 hours,
right?
And I'm about to show you a video. It's 2 minutes and 30 seconds long.
I know, right? That's what we got reduced down to.
These guys talk so much useless stuff that we've completely edited down to 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
That's all right. It's all right.
Took on a mind of its own, and people were, copying the video and rebroadcasting it on YouTube.
The camera is owned by Streamtime Live, but mounted on a home in Riviera Beach. Mike Singer with the Baltimore and Chesapeake Bay Shipwatchers group asked a friend if he could mount it there 10 months earlier to show activity at the Port of Baltimore. He had no idea it would capture history on March 26th and how much it would skyrocket their viewership.
If the Pride of Baltimore or the Coast Guard Eagle or the largest container ship coming through town was coming through and on camera, there might be 25 people. That morning, 10,000.
With all eyes on the Port of Baltimore, Singer and fellow shipwatcher Kipp Snow decided the time was right to start a podcast. So on May 13th, they did just that.
There's been, obviously, a lot of big events lately, and a lot of questions.
They want to shine the spotlight on the port and everything that goes on there. They spend a good deal of time updating listeners on the status of the Key Bridge rebuild.
I think that the Key Bridge is something that's on a lot of people's minds, obviously, because not only you have people driving over it on a daily basis, but you've got a lot of people who look at the Key Bridge as a centric focal point within the community.
Snow says the podcast is gaining traction with listeners, releasing a new episode every week. There are more than 20 episodes in and plan to expand as they can.
We're starting to see a lot of people starting to engage and ask questions, which is really encouraging.
They say it's a sign that people care about the port and that the Key Bridge was much more than just a way to get around.
You don't realize how emotionally attached you are to that structure that frames your city, basically, right? And then when it's gone, it's horribly tragic.
If you're interested in following the podcast or the Shipwatchers group, you can find a link on our free mobile app. In Pasadena, Kim Dacey, WBAL-TV 11.
Okay. I noticed that we both chuckled when they used episode 1 in their news broadcast.
Come on, guys. Yeah, it was great. I think they did a great job, but
they
I'm like, come on, man, the first one.
First, we could have gone to the second one. Let's do better on editing.
Wasn't it horrible lighting in the alternate kitchen in my basement?
It's all right. This just shows how far we've come on this. That's all.
Yeah,
I do appreciate the attention and the focus and I know that got some the news article drew up some more interest, and so I was happy with that. So
yeah, we definitely saw some metrics tick up. We got 250 hits on the website that day, and another 20 podcast subscribers, I think. Nice. Something like that. Yeah, that was cool to be a part of.
Yeah. I do thank WBAL for that for that connection and supporting us. So
yeah, and the kid might have had something to do with it.
Yeah, it's okay. The ILA was back in the news. I thought we had this thing fixed, but apparently,
it was a temporary fix, right?
Yeah. I don't think it's done, but I think there's still some more work to be done on this one.
Mm-hmm.
So the ILA and the U.S. Maritime Alliance resumed talks last week to negotiate the rest of the disputes that were addressed in last month's strike at the ports up and down the East Coast. Those talks actually quickly halted when the discussion of port automation came up.
Mm-hmm.
And the breakdown occurred when the USMX proposed the introduction of semi-automated equipment at ports. The ILA's claim on this is that it's rooted in concern about job preservation and that the USMX wants to eliminate as many ILA jobs as possible and replace that labor with robotic equipment. That's their basis here.
Mm-hmm.
And the USMX, in response, has stated the implementation of semi-automated equipment is essential for a number of things like modernization, improving worker safety, increasing efficiency while protecting protecting those jobs and growing those jobs. Right? I'm going to come back to that in just a minute.
Right.
So back to kind of set the scene. Back in October, we had the 3-day strike. Both sides agreed to an increase of wages by 62%. That was one of the big things that they were really going after.
That was significant.
And with the understanding that discussions on the rest of the contract-related issues would be addressed and finalized by an extended date to the master contract of January 15th of 2025. Okay, so now we're in October. We still have nobody's going to strike tomorrow. Okay, but we've got 2 months to go and work on these issues that need to be addressed. So they've walked away, and that was the last response. That was 2 to 3 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
We should listen out to what the news is going to be as they progress over the next 2 months.
Mm-hmm. So we got some upcoming events.
Yeah, there's a number of things coming up this week or in the next couple of weeks. On Wednesday, the 20th, so that's in a couple of days here.
Oh, right.
The World Trade Center Institute is hosting their annual State of the Ports Address, 3:30 p.m. I think there are some tickets still available, so if if you're interested, World Trade Center Institute, you can Google search that one. They're going to have a couple of breakout sessions. One is on workforce development. One's on, I believe, some technology related things. I have to look back at what the agenda is.
Mm-hmm.
And then Secretary Wiedefeld will give a state of the port. I'm sure Jonathan Daniels will be there. I don't know if he'll get up and speak also, but I know Wiedefeld will be there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also some they bring in different countries from the embassies to showcase their business here in and around the Port of Baltimore, and they have some tastings, some food tastings and beverage tastings. Is pretty neat to talk to some of those folks. December 3rd, 5 p.m., Trade Point Atlantic is having their annual star lighting ceremony. Friday, December the 6th at 10 a.m., the Maryland Port Administration Dredging Program's annual meeting will take place. All right, so they've got some big news with all the dredging that's going on. And then December the 11th, the Women's Traffic and Transportation Club of Baltimore is having their annual holiday party. And so I know that there's some other events coming up mid to late December. We'll include that also.
All right, that sounds cool. And then we always try to get a little Port of Baltimore history segment.
Yeah,
did we drop the ball, dude?
Yeah, I know.
How do we? Every once in a while, we get our podcast done, and I'm like, oh my God, how did we forget Veterans Day, for crying out loud?
Yeah.
But you dug up some interesting stuff,
yeah,
didn't you?
We talked about that this week, and so you suggested something. So I went and took a look at the Port of Baltimore's role within the various wars that the country's been involved with, and I found some what I think is some pretty interesting things. It's easy to link the Port of Baltimore to the Revolutionary War. With the involvement of Fort McHenry and the Star Spangled Banner and Francis Scott Key and Clipper ships and all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty easy to identify. But the
right
for the
War of 1812 was
yeah. So the War of
half
1812.
Of
what was interesting is that the U.S. government allowed privateering, which is where individual citizens could use their own vessels to capture enemy ships due to the lack of large ships that the lack of large ships that the U.S. had against the British Navy. So British Navy had all their ships. They're coming over here. We didn't have that. So this was a plan to address that. And so you had lots of locals who used their clipper ships or whatever they had to go out there and defend the city.
Yes.
And in World War II, the port was utilized. Focusing around Bethlehem steel, and because they manufactured all the flat plate steel for Fairfield, for shipbuilding for all the Liberty ships. Ellicott Machine Building was building engines near Federal Hill, and Bartlett Hayward was producing bronze propellers and propulsion gears. So that was kind of interesting that you had that type of manufacturing. Now, ironically, it's just right across the street from where all the ships are being built. But to have those areas right there in the port area that was doing that manufacturing. In the Korean and Vietnam Wars, so highly specialized products like coke, coal, specialty steels, engineering goods were moved between the U.S. and Europe and Japanese ports. And after the Lend-Lease and firepower for Eisenhower, Baltimore shipped the Marshall Plan cargoes to rebuild Europe, and then used military supplies to Korea and Vietnam. So there was a world trade boom that was felt from 1970 to 1973 because of this. And in the boom years, the Port of Baltimore handled 30 million tons of cargo.
Wow.
So it's just, we talk about the things that we're doing from a commercial perspective, but during wartime efforts, that's also import and export metrics also that are collected. The Persian Gulf War. Now, I'm old enough to remember all of this, but you hear a lot about some of the older wars, but in the Persian Gulf, the only Navy vessel that received an actual activation order was the USNS Comfort, which is the Navy hospital ship, which at the time was home base was the Port of Baltimore. And so the crew received a deployment order, they set sail to go after that. And in the first 30 days of Operation Desert Shield, which was the precursor, the New Cumberland Army Depot in Pennsylvania shipped more than 3,000 tons of repair parts, tool sets, construction materials to Saudi Arabia via the Port of Baltimore.
Now, which depot?
The New Cumberland Army Depot.
Oh,
in
okay.
Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So wartime efforts tend to lead towards war-related exports and volume through the port. So, we salute our veterans. my father, Navy veteran in Vietnam. Appreciate his efforts and what
My
he
dad
did.
was in Korea
Yep.
in
And
like mop up duty afterwards.
that's okay. That
Mm-hmm.
was needed also.
Mm-hmm.
Every job that was involved, I feel is equally important in that.
Right.
But from a port perspective, there is interconnectivity to importing and exporting, and what the port provided as
Stuff's
an
going
easy
overseas. It's got to go through a port.
Yep. So that's our tie into Veterans Day and Port of Baltimore history.
All right. I might have some breaking news.
Okay.
I'm reading this for the first time. So, Baltimore, President Joe Biden is taking an important step in his effort to lock in federal money to rebuild Baltimore's collapsed Francis Scott Key Bridge, including money for the bridge in a broader $100 billion disaster funding request he sent to Congress on Monday. So this is like today's news.
Okay.
The request is necessary for Biden to secure the funding before he leaves office, fulfilling a pledge he made publicly just hours after the bridge was toppled following a ship strike last March.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and regrettably, the internet is full of people who are just, like the inflatable, guy at the gas station. Right. And so people are like, who's paying for this? Why does the government have to pay for it? Why? And so, again, like, even though the bridge is, the demo, the bridge is delayed, it's good to hear something. It's good to hear some concrete information. And so
I agree.
This is cool. So I just had one of my friends this guy, I'm just going to take a minute here. This guy, Norman Fogel, super, super nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy, the world we live in, right? I have an internet friend, right? How many internet friends do I have because of this social media group that we do all the stuff for the port? But so this guy started hanging out and watching the live stream camera. And then we elevated him to a camera operator. Okay. Super good guy. His wife has some health problems. He takes care of her. He had a hip replacement operation. And so he's walking across the street to a neighbor's house and gets hit by a car.
Wow.
Yeah. So the poor guy's in the hospital. I went and visited him this weekend. But he just sent this to me.
Oh.
So
nice. Okay.
This guy's in the hospital and he's thinking about the Port of Baltimore. This guy's got it bad.
Let's send him some well wishes and speedy recovery, please.
Yes. Yeah. Well wishes to you, Norm, and get better fast, man.
He also made the breaking news segment. Is
that pun number 4?
No, that was not a pun.
Oh, okay.
No, that was trying to be sincere. Actually, I guess I lost my point. And you win.
We're past the delirious stage now.
Yeah, it's past my bedtime now.
Yeah, it's a minute and 20 here. Okay. All right, I guess we're almost done. Right. Can we talk about these cool calendars again?
Yeah, plug your calendars. I need to place my order also.
Okay. Well, you just send me your address. How about that? So every year, Baltimore Shipwatchers does a calendar, and what we do is we grab the best pictures from the last year from our local photographers, and we make a calendar out of it. And it's a fundraiser for us because there are costs associated with running the Shipwatchers. So these calendars are $35 shipped in the U.S. But what I thought in light of the tragic accident this year is that we would just do key bridge pictures. Nothing else but key bridge pictures. And so, in theory, you have a whole collection of key bridge pictures that, you could frame a couple of these.
Yeah.
And keep them if you wanted to. So let's see if we can go through some of them here. So
there's some really, really good shots.
Yeah. So I looked for photos, and of course they're in the group, right? Mm-hmm. They're in the group. But I recruited 2 other people to go through and get me as many great photos as you could. Plus, I asked in the post, hey, do you everybody have great pic? I mean, I took 60 photos.
Oh, wow.
There were 60 that I chose that were great. Nice. And then I had to nail it down to 12. Yeah, so this isn't as close up, but this is the Pride of Baltimore and the fireboat, right? This is from Maritime Day. And the Key Bridge. The Blue Angels, Fleet Week, Domino Sugar, and the Key Bridge.
Nice.
Yeah, a nice combination. And the Francis Scott Key Memorial Buoy, signifying where Francis Scott Key was when he was on board a British ship negotiating the release of somebody, and he had to spend the night on the ship and watch them bomb the hell out of his city. This is a sunset picture from a former ship pilot. The first set of cranes to come through. The first set of post-Panamax cranes to come through.
Yep.
So, a lot of great pictures in here.
Definitely.
Yep.
Nice.
So if you would like one of these, go to the website, baltimoreshipwatchers.com. There is a merch tab, and then on there you can order through PayPal or what's the other one? Anyway, it's on the website. So $35 shipped in the U.S. Yep. Got anything else?
That's it for me.
That is it. All right. So as we always talk about, hey, if you are listening to this on YouTube, give us a like, hit the bell to subscribe to new podcasts as they come available. So we are Balto Ches on YouTube, Twix, and Instagram.
And if you're in the car going through the tunnel every day, you want to listen to the audio version of this, you can listen to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
And those links are on the website now.
That is correct.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
3, 2, 1.
Happy ship watching.
All right. All right, everybody. Have a good week.
Have a good week. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next podcast.
Sounds good.